Hi everyone, and welcome to my next video for Nier on the PlayStation 3. This is going to basically take us through to ending A, the first ending of the game. And I have to apologize for cutting out a bit of the game. For some reason, my capture card wasn't recording at the time, and so I missed the parts after the facade, after Fira dies, and where you and the king avenge her death by killing the wolf pack. So I didn't get that in there, and I didn't get some of the parts here in the junk heap leading up to this fight with this robot and the Shade. And it's interesting because I did get endings B and C already prior to recording this video, and so I'm going to try and speak out of context because there's so much I know of the story now that isn't made known in the first playthrough. So I think one of the most brilliant strokes of Nier's story is the fact that, you know, the first time you play through it, the story is still really, really good, and it's very touching, very emotional, but something that comes to light in subsequent playthroughs in your New Game Plus journeys is the backstory of a lot of these enemies that you run into, and especially just of the shades throughout the game. So there's a lot that happens and a lot of context that's added that just elevates the story beyond most things that I've played. You know, I've played some games that have some really good storylines this year. Like I played The Last of Us, and that was, you know, one of the best games in terms of mature story content. I really loved it, but there was something missing, I would say, from that one. When I compare it to a game like Nier, it's a little cold, and there is a good amount of relationship building between Joel and Ellie and some of the other characters. You know, it's good, but Nier just takes it to the next level. And something I had talked about in a previous video, and it might have been the last one, where the king and Fira are getting married, is that this game does seem to take a lot of nods from the works of Studio Ghibli and Hayao Miyazaki in particular, just in terms of how much attention the scenario and story writers paid to the characters. And, you know, no character is left neglected. I'm really happy that they spent so much time building backstory for secondary characters, and even characters or you know, shades or enemies that you thought were just kind of there to push the narrative along, but they're there for good reason. And so that, again, I just think really makes this game's story its true standout feature. So you know, with that being said, I'm going to try and blast my way through this video. I do apologize for one other thing, that this video is so long. I think this one's going to be 40 something minutes, so hopefully I can kind of keep going through most of this and actually find some things to talk about that I haven't discussed yet. But yeah, the first chunk of this video is me just getting the pieces for the key that will get you into the last area of the game. And so earlier in this, I took care of the stuff at the junk heap, and you also saw that I took care of the big monster that hangs out at the bridge in the northern plains between your village and the Eyrie. And that was a cool fight. And if you are going for endings C and D, you will need all the weapons, and in order to get all the weapons, you'll have to defeat that large Shade. So he's not too hard. You can kind of, you know, do a roll into him and do some attacks and roll out before he swings and hits you. And so once you do that, you'll get one of your weapons. And yeah, so here you talk to the guards, say you killed the big Shade, and he'll give you 30,000 gold, which is helpful. something I did in, I believe, my New Game Plus playthrough in order to get enough money to buy the rest of the weapons from the various blacksmiths throughout the game is I planted rice, and so I bought a bunch of, I think it was the bountiful fertilizer or whatever it's called, and rice, and so I bought those, I believe, from Seafront, and then I went back to my garden, planted it all, and then the next day I came back and picked it all and sold it, and I got a ton of money for it. So you can plant 15 different seeds, and you can only carry, I think, up to 99 of each. So you can plant them, harvest them, but you'll probably have to go and sell them, sell a batch first, and then come back and harvest again, and sell and do that again. So I did that, and yeah, I had, by the time I did that, I had more than enough money to afford the rest of the weapons in the game that you can buy at the blacksmiths. And another thing that I did later, and I'm getting way ahead of myself, is I think there's a quest called the Damaged Map, and that was just a big pain in the ass. I think one of the reasons why I'm not going to platinum this game is because the quests in Nier are pretty boring. And, you know, even though there is some cool story stuff that happens, just the time involved to do them, especially the ones that require rare drops and a good number of rare drops, just isn't something that interests me in the least. So so it's a good thing I'm not a trophy hunter or care about platinum. So yeah, I don't want the feeling of, you know, doing mundane tasks to tarnish my opinion of this game, which, as you'll see in my review, is very high. And so that shouldn't be any surprise if you've been following these videos. And so after you finish up, I think I already did the Forest of Myth. When you do the Forest of Myth one, it's basically a story where you have to pay attention to two little details in the story and then answer the questions correctly at the end. And they do change, they do vary a little bit, so you just have to pay attention to what those details are and then answer it at the end, and you will get your key piece. And after you do that, you will come back to the area. You'll have received a letter from somebody at the area, and you'll come back here and go into a pretty large battle. And once again, Kaine gets sliced, and you think she's dead, but she's not. And you fight a lot, and then you come here where there's this swirling, ominous swirling black stuff in the air, and so you'll fight a few more enemies, take care of this large shade. I think it's cool that after you get to the halfway point in the game, a lot of the shades are armored, and they have this Demon Souls look to them. Actually, the whole look of this game kind of has that feel. I don't know if it's the I don't know if these games are using middleware or whatnot, but they kind of have a similar look in terms of how just the armor looks, the way that their colors are and the way they shine. Very similar to that game, although it's been a long time since I've played it, and in fact I never did finish that game from Software in Atlas. So maybe one day I'll play it. I do have it sitting on my shelf, kind of mocking me, and yeah, so I think I'll go back and play that at some point. And so here you face this large shade. Emil plays a big part in this fight, but they're talking about how all these villagers and stuff are kind of stuck inside this spherical shade. So again, probably sound like a broken record a little bit, but a lot of these things you're doing, the shades you're killing, you have to do it, but there is I guess almost a moral dilemma going on, and that really comes to light in New Game Plus. So again, just kind of brilliant storytelling in this game, and if the writer or director has done anything else where the story is of this high caliber, I will definitely have to play the rest of their titles, because this is really something special when it comes to story and music. So yeah, so here you are taking care of business. The this fight occurs, I think, in 4 stages. So the first 2, you're on this lower platform, and you hit the eye a little bit, and then the second time you'll trigger this larger event where he'll fire at you with a laser, pink laser beam. And so Emil will be holding him, and you'll have to get to a higher platform in order to attack it from the back. And so you jump up onto the higher platform where you go to see, the village elder, and after you shoot him a little bit, he'll go one more down to the lowest platform near the entrance. And so you just kind of beat on him for a little longer and do your finisher right here. And this is a really good scene. So, once you do this, Emil kind of goes into berserker mode, and you kind of see the true power of him and Halua, his sister, who have, I guess, kind of combined here. And so you see kind of the terror and power and what he's capable of. And what he does is completely destroy the Aerie, sort of Akira style. And I think that goes back to the scenes in the underground research lab where you fight Halua. And there are a lot of influences from Katsuhiro Otomo's masterwork. So this right here, it's very similar, and just kind of cool looking. And these pre-rendered scenes don't happen too often throughout the game, but they're pretty cool to look at. And so it's interesting that he does this, but the damage he's doing, and he's totally taking out this city and pretty much all of its inhabitants, but your party comes away unscathed. So I don't know if they really explain that. I don't know if he can actually protect you, or maybe it's just a convenience of the story, but it's a moment here where Emil reflects on what he's done, and here's kind of the little bit of the money shot. It's like, whoa, this kid is pretty powerful. So it kind of gives me chills just watching that. And so kind of taking a step back and talking about the quests in this game. So in the second half of Nier, there are another 50 or so subquests that open up that you can do, and I had started a good number of them in this playthrough, but didn't finish them, and didn't think that, if I don't finish them here, I'm going to have to start them over. And sure enough, in subsequent playthroughs, if you haven't finished a quest, obviously you're going to have to start it over, since the game is basically dropping you in around the point where you're about to unpetrify Kaine in the library. And so that's just one thing to keep in mind, that if you are in the middle of a longer quest where you're collecting stuff and getting those rare drops, make sure you finish them and turn them into the quest givers before you head into the end game. Otherwise, you'll have to start them over from the beginning. So I believe that's the last key. Yeah, so after you get the last piece of that key, you go talk to Popola and Devila, who kind of drop a bit of a hint here, a little bit of a foreshadowing hint that I didn't pick up on, but it all made sense once I got to the next part of the game. And you have to excuse me, every once in a while I'm going to have to take a break to take a drink so that my throat isn't completely dry by the end of this. And so after you have all the keys, you take the ferry to the Lost Shrine once again. So this is the third time you're here. And once you make it to the top, you use the key to unlock this. And this is a nice area. I really like this little, I don't even know what you would call this, but very beautiful. And in order to get through this, you have to talk to these birds and answer a few questions about, I think, shades and humans. And pretty easy. And once you answer them correctly, it'll open a door. It's kind of anticlimactic. And Vice is just, well, then I guess we have access. And so once you go through this door, you run into Devila and Popola and find out that they've been kind of working with the Shadow Lord from the beginning. But again, it's not so clear yet, but through the end of this, and then especially through the New Game Plus playthroughs, it's not just black and white. It's not just Nier and the quote-unquote humans fighting the shades. It's much deeper than that. And so a lot of that kind of comes through in a bit of exposition that happens when you run into Devila and Popola again. But here, you fight them, and they're really easy. They're almost not even really bosses. And speaking of difficulty, yeah, the whole end game isn't very hard. And I think I did mention that in my last video, is that the second half of Nier is pretty easy. And so maybe that's something that people don't like, is that the game actually to me felt easier in its second half than the first half. But I liked it. And there are still things that will give you trouble, especially fighting the Shadow Lord. And there are some places where you can get instantly killed. Thankfully, the checkpoints in this game are very, very generous, so you won't have to do or redo a lot of work if you happen to die during battle. And so yeah, some people might argue it's too easy and anticlimactic, but I think at this point, if you've made it this far into Nier, what you're most interested in is seeing how the story resolves. And I think in that sense, you won't be disappointed. And I have seen some people that said they only played through it and got the first ending, and they said they were okay with that and didn't feel like playing more. But I would highly recommend that at least 2 playthroughs is essential in understanding most of what Nier's story has to offer. And you'll get all of that in Ending B. You'll learn a lot about Kaine and a lot of backstory for a lot of the other secondary characters in the game, some of which just kind of blew me away. And I did get Ending C, and I'll talk about those endings a little bit more in detail when I do those videos. But Ending C provides one of the, I guess, true endings to the game. It doesn't add a whole lot, if anything, throughout the playthrough, but there is a choice you have to make at the very end. It's pretty heavy stuff, so it is worth going through that third time to do it, and it helps to be able to skip cutscenes, and as you've leveled up and everything, I mean, you will make very short work of bosses. And so it only takes a couple hours to do a New Game Plus playthrough if you're just doing Critical Path. And so this right here is, again, kind of feeling the Princess Mononoke Miyazaki influence. The boar very much reminds me of the ones from that film. And so they aren't really beatable. Not by you anyway, so you keep fighting this boar. It gets stronger, becomes armored, and then spews out this noxious gas. And so you just kind of keep beating away and running away from him. And just when you think all is lost, something kind of cool happens. And I did die here a couple times running up this spiral staircase. I was hitting the boxes because I wanted items, but there aren't any items in the boxes that are along the staircase. I think there are some items at the beginning, but I'd say don't bother trying to knock them open on your way up. Otherwise, the boar will catch up to you and kill you. And so right here, you think it's all over, and then lo and behold, your friends from the facade appear, which is cool. And how they got there, who knows? But it's one of those, you know, story things that that does work, and it's nice. It's nice that they appear because you have built a very strong relationship with them. You know, not just from the beginning. You know, 5 years ago when you helped him and Fira in the temple, but after, you know, afterwards, after Fira is killed and you help the king avenge her by taking out the wolves. So these scenes are really, really good, and you're like, well, you know, they're probably done for, but you know, they have their reasons for doing what they do, and yeah, it's just really, really good storytelling. And yeah, they tie things back. Like here, they're like, you know, how many different rules do we have, you know, to shout before dying, and the guy he's like 80 something, and so it's kind of cool that they are consistent with the characters in terms of storytelling and their history. So really nice job, and that's not something that's easy to do. I think most games, you know, you'll have your typical cast of characters, and you know, they all have their sort of basic personalities, and but here there is a lot of complexity to the characters. You know, there's some things about them that are more mysterious, but you know, those layers do get peeled back the more you play through it, and the more the characters grow. It's kind of nice that in most cases the characters don't trust each other at first, but as you go through the various experiences, they do start opening up, and you learn a lot about one another, which is just fantastic. So here, after you have a nice scene between Kaine and Nier, just about, you know, letting them do what they want, and don't let them fight. Don't let their fight be for nothing. You start learning that humans, as we know it, kind of went extinct. I think it was like something like 1,300 years ago, and then there's this, I think this Project Gestalt, which basically is almost like the Blade Runner piece of the story, where they've been replicated over and over time, and that shades are kind of the remnants of humans, and they want to get back into a shell, which is, I guess, you know, the replicant form or the Gestalt form of the quote-unquote humans. And so that's interesting, right? In that you think these shades are just sort of these evil things at the beginning, evil, scary things, but you know, they're not necessarily. And so that's really neat that there is such ambiguity between knowing what's right and wrong, good and bad, in this game. So it's tough. It's tough, and I know I've mentioned this before, but it is very much like Shadow of the Colossus, where you have to do these things that are bad, and you're doing them to save somebody, but you're having to do these awful things throughout the game. And that was one of the first games in recent memory that made me really question what I was doing, the choices I was making. I knew I had to do it to advance the story, but it didn't mean that I had to like it. And the same is true in this game, especially in New Game Plus playthrough. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy what they reveal to the player, and it really makes you take a step back and second guess your choices. It sucks because you have to do it, unless you just can't do it, but you have to do it to see where the story goes. So you're doing these bad things and you don't feel good about it, but you're almost forced to just to advance the game. So that's again, that's pretty heavy stuff. And one of my friends was talking to me about it and said, yeah, it was one of the first times he just felt awful about having to do what he was doing at certain parts in the game, and I felt the same way. So again, just expert writing and game design, in my opinion. So really, really cool. So here, actually, I think the voice actor for Yona is the same as Devil and Popola. I don't know if they're the same, but they pretty much sound all alike to me, which was kind of distracting. I think she's not the best voice actress, although when she screams, it kind of made my blood curdle, like in a good way. It was a really good scream, like she had lost her twin sister, and the way she screams is just really good, really kind of painful. But again, they're super easy, and you could pretty much take them out before any of their dialogue is done. So I mean, it takes like 4 hits, and then it goes into this long cinematic where basically you're trying to escape, and Emil sacrifices himself for the party to save them. And it's a good scene. It's a really good scenes like this. You're just like, oh well, you could sort of see them coming. Like someone's gonna have to make a major sacrifice for the betterment of the survival of the rest of the party. So it almost has to be Emil, right? I mean, Kaine and Nier have to go on. But yeah, it's a good scene, and again, Emil, he is a great character in this, and I don't know why people have such bad things to say about his voice actor. I think he does a good job. There's certain scenes. I think the one after you take out, it might have been Gretel. But after you take that boss out, and Kaine almost dies, his little speech there is a little over the top, but it's not horrible. And again, if you pay attention more to what he's saying versus how it's being said, then it's pretty good. So here he goes. He does tend to be a little bit wordy, but it's okay.
Keep going. Move.
Emil.
Don't worry.
So yeah, there goes Emil. And so I'm assuming that people watching this are folks who have already beaten the game and seen all the endings. So I don't think there's anything I'm going to say that's going to be like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that was going to happen. So the kind of cool thing, and I think it was an ending C, is that Emil, or maybe it was ending B, I'm not sure. But you find out that Emil does survive, part of him anyway. And so it was a really great thing to see at the end of that particular New Game Plus playthrough, that yes, Emil is alive and well, and that he just wants to see his friends. And so yeah, I like scenes like this. I like that they take their time, kind of draw them out a little bit, give you some time to think about his choice, what he's going through, what's happening to him, and yeah, just think about the things he's done up to this point. And yeah, so after this scene, which is sort of like the one in the facade, after Furidize. They take a lot of time during these scenes where characters are dying. And that right there, again, very similar look to Akira. So I'm assuming that the folks that worked on this game and wrote the scenario are fans of that. And finally, you come to this area. The Shadow Lord is looking over Yona. And this is, I think, it might be the first time you've seen Yona since she's disappeared. And so she's older now. Her hair's longer. Yeah, she looks very beautiful. And here is the Shadow Lord. And what's interesting is that in this playthrough, you hear him talking throughout these scenes and later ones, but you don't know what he's saying. But in New Game Plus, he is subtitled, so you do understand what he's saying. And it could be because it's from the story is being mainly told from Kaine's perspective, and since she does have that shade in her, that she can understand what they're saying. I could be wrong. I probably am. But that's the way I interpreted it. So I love this scene. This is really good. And it's the first time that there's a sense of intimacy now that's growing between Nier and Kaine. And so, it's interesting because, all the way up to this point, that hasn't been a part of it. But, everything that they've done for each other, I guess it would be impossible not to have those feelings develop between them. And so it's a very short moment, but very meaningful, very powerful. So I like that a lot. And speaking of Kaine, this does get explained a little bit more in the beginning of the ending B playthrough, but you start to learn, more about her past. And I've seen a lot of things online that focus on her being a hermaphrodite or whatever. And so I've read that it's because there was an error in the Gestalt program, and there was a mutation so that she kind of popped out as both. But it's interesting in that there is so much conversation around that, and why that's so important. I don't think it's that big a deal, and I don't think it really changes much in the story, because I think there are other pieces of information from the narrative that are so much more important to who she is than that. So I almost think it does a disservice when all these conversations kind of are centralized around that piece of her character. So just my 2 cents. I'm sure I'll talk about it a little bit more in my ending B commentary. But here is where the final showdown takes place between you and the Shadow Lord. And here's Grimoire Noir, who is a complete pushover. Just takes a few hits, and he's done. And then this first wave against the Shadow Lord, very easy. And then as you're about to take him out, Yona gets up. And so here's a bit more between the complexity that goes into the complexity of the story. And so if I'm understanding it right, so Yona has a black scroll, so she has a shade inside of her, and I believe the Shadow Lord wants a shell too, so he wants to become sort of human again, and he wants that for his daughter, but she doesn't necessarily want that, and so she eventually lets the shade go from her body.
Please.
And at the end of this, it kind of resolves everything for
I don't
these
need
4
someone
characters.
else's body. I don't want it.
You know, there's probably a lot more in terms of complexity of the story that is probably
I can hear her.
that I'm probably not getting.
She says
But yeah, so this is a really good scene in that, you know, the Yona's saying that the
as much as I
the girl inside her, or the shade inside of her, you know, just wants to be with her father,
just as much.
who's the Shadow Lord.
It's not right that she can't see him.
And so, and yeah, it's just like he's. And I think both the shade and the replicant versions, they just want what's best for
Dad?
their daughter.
Yes, I am.
I mean, even if it means that their existence will come to an end if they're just the replicant forms. That's the way I interpreted it. Is that I don't know if the shade aspects being inside those shells means that they will live longer or forever. But yeah, I guess the replicant forms will have their limited life, and that's it. So who knows? I'm probably rambling at this point. It's we're almost 40 minutes into this, and I think I have completely exhausted what I want to talk about. And it's very early in the morning on a Monday, and so I apologize if I'm not making any sense. But yeah, so after this scene comes one of the most, I guess it's really annoying. So I did say that this second half of the game was pretty easy, but there are a couple waves against the Shadow Lord that I just got destroyed. It didn't really seem fair, but thankfully you don't really have to hit him that many times, and it's more about just evading, dodging, getting through his attacks. So I didn't show it, but he'll send these waves of energy blasts at you, and you kind of have to dodge around the sides of the walls, and then he'll come down, and you'll be able to fight him. And then this scene plays between you and Grimoire Weiss,
You okay?
and
I'm just fine. All right, I'm not.
to the end, he's
Vice.
pretty funny.
Seems that some
He says he
idiot has decided to push
should have been a
me beyond
cookbook.
my limits. I should have
But
taken my job as a
he loses his power, so he can't use magic anymore.
Vice. I'm sorry. Who am I joking?
But
I hate
you don't really need it, and the Shadow Lord will fire what is probably the craziest blasts of energy at you. It's like you're in a cave shooter, but you only have to hit him a few times. I think it's like 3 times, and then it'll trigger the ending.
I wish you luck, my friend.
So yeah, I did pick up the soundtrack for this game, and I've really been enjoying it. I don't mean this as any sort of insult, but it's one of the best albums to listen to before going to sleep. Some of the tracks are so relaxing that it just puts me to sleep almost instantly. So that's good, because I have a hard time falling asleep at night usually. But yeah, great soundtrack. One of the best soundtracks of the PlayStation 3 generation, and easily one of the best soundtracks since, I'd say, Chrono Cross. That's one of my favorite soundtracks. Maybe even a little more than Chrono Trigger, even though I like Chrono Trigger more as a game. But in terms of just memorable tracks and melody, and just the way it invokes emotion, it is seriously one of the best. And I'm sure there are other excellent ones out there. I tend to not play too many JRPGs or action games like this, and so yeah, I'm curious to discover others that are as good as this soundtrack, if not better. But it's tough to imagine a soundtrack being as good as this. It's just wonderful, especially the vocals. They really add a lot to the music. So here, the final blow takes out the Shadow Lord, and so you think he's gone. And then this was interesting. You know, you try to wake Yona, and there's a bit of a flashback scene that occurs here.
God, no.
So,
Oh, please.
like a lot of scenes, you think she's dead, and Groomer Vice is like, nah,
Vice?
don't be an idiot.
Where are you?
That is because I have lost my physical form. Doubtless my voice will be the next to go. Your Yona is safe. Do not mourn her, and do not give up hope.
How do I do that?
Use your memories. Present her with proof that the two of you live still.
I don't know.
Typical. But
Sorry, I'm not saying much here. I'm reading the dialogue because I forgot what happens here, but I really like it.
What's my favorite place?
And then they do an interesting here about
Okay, one more question.
when she asks who's the person I love more than anyone, and that's you. So you put your name in, and I don't know if you can screw that up, but when you type your name in, she wakes up. And so here's the payoff for everything you've done. She knows that
Yona.
you're her father.
Is this my body?
Yes. Yours. And yours alone.
You look stronger than before. You look good.
You haven't seen
Yeah,
me
so it's
for a
been
long
5 years, and I think she's
Have I been
been cured of it.
asleep?
The black scrawl.
I think so.
And then
Wow.
it's a good scene.
It's like I'm a
coming up
princess
here.
from some fairy tale.
A little bit sad
So happy, Yona. I'm so very happy.
because you want Kaine to stay and be with them, but
Kaine?
you know her story is a
You
bit
two
more
have
of a
to
tragic
goodbye.
one,
Okay.
and so it's not that
Where are
easy.
you gonna go, Kaine?
And so in ending A,
You could stay with us.
Nuya offers her a chance to stay, but
Thanks, but I'll pass.
she knows that
You know how it is.
it can't be that way.
I got my own shit to take care
So
of.
she says she has her
What
own
do you
stuff to
mean?
take care of.
Personal shit. That doesn't involve you. Take it easy, alright?
Kaine.
And she leaves.
Dad, look. It's beautiful.
So that part, I mean, it's a little bit unsatisfying, but you know, a lot of stuff happens later
Someone kept calling
in
out
New
to
Game
me,
Plus that
wanting to see the
explains a
light.
lot of it, and then eventually in ending C and D,
And
really
now
brings things
I
full
finally
circle
see it.
in a very, very powerful way. Then after this, the credits play, and I like the credits in this game. I'm not going to show them all, but I do like the credits in that they it's just alphabetical. It's not all broken down by teams and various the companies and all that. But before I get to that, you know, here's a short scene showing Nier and Yona. Younger. It's a lunar tear. Yeah.
Thanks, Dad.
Which becomes even more significant as you learn more in
It's
New
so
Game Plus.
sunny today.
Yeah. It sure is.
Then one more shot here that shows the Shadow Lord and kind of grown up Yona. So that they're together now, which is good. It gives me goosebumps. And so yeah, the credits are nice. It's just alphabetical, and it only takes a few minutes, which I really appreciate. So anyway, that's ending A for Nier. So I will be getting endings B and C out this week. And yeah, thanks for hanging out, and see you in the next video.